Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, and I promised you guys for the last 3 weeks, if anyone has still not hit the unsubscribe button from 3 consecutive weeks of listening to just my voice, we finally have not one, but 2 guests. And not only do we have 2 guests joining me today, one of them is live streaming this recording on Twitch, which is awesome. And both of them are original gangsta, OG TPE guys. So you know them, you love them. We're talking about Killingbird, Derek, Tenbush, and of course, RonFezBuddy himself, Diego L'Amato, is with us. You guys, welcome. How's it going?
Hey.
It is going well. It's hard to get guests on the podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure you found that was why you didn't record one for 6 months.
Now you know why it went away for so long.
Yeah, well, it is so much more fun for me to have someone to talk to. So I'm glad you guys are here. And there's a reason why we're doing this special 3-man podcast for you guys. And it occurred to Derek recently that this is the 9-year anniversary of Tournament Poker Edge.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. In fact, as I recall, we actually launched the website at midnight tonight 9 years ago.
That's right.
So it was it was kind of an exciting night for us, and how we're still here 9 years later, I'll never know, but here we are.
It was an awesome 1 year before Black Friday, so we had a wonderful timing.
Yeah,
8 years after Black Friday, so who would have thought?
That's how I always remember the date, is because it happened exactly 1 year to the day before Black Friday.
Right. Yeah. Tax day, April 5th. Yep. Yeah. So the year was, set the stage for me, Derek, as you're about to launch your website 9 years ago. The year was 2011? We're talking
2010.
Yep. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And we started working on it in 2009.
Correct.
Right.
So,
why don't we go through that before we press, record on the actual live, right? So let's go back and rewind to, how did this even happen? 2009. You guys must have been so young, clueless.
Yeah. And I was beautiful.
I was way thinner.
I had less gray hair, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it was cool. So, like, Diego and I had, so it's interesting, actually, the way we met is kind of funny. I had posted a message on the 2+2 forum, and it's not really all that exciting what the question was about, but Diego basically replied and said, "Oh, I'm in a very similar situation to you," and he just gave me a bunch of advice, and we talked about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and it was about, I remember what it was. You were like, hey, I love poker, but I have a job, and I have a kid, and, is anyone else in this kind of situation? It was that early that people were still kind of trying to figure out where poker fit in their life and how to balance it. So I responded, as Derek said. Yeah. Basically similar situation here.
Yeah, so we kind of got to be friends through that, and then we, along with some other people, started like a private forum, basically like a strategy forum that was a little less troll heavy was our goal. Yeah. And it was just like I said, a private forum with, I think we maybe topped out at like 40 members or something.
Yep.
This would have been back in 2009 or 2008.
Yeah. This was I guess we probably started that in 2008.
Yeah, I'd say 2008, maybe late 2007 or early 2008. And it was around for like maybe a year and a half before we even started TPE. So probably like 2008, early 2008.
Around the year 2003 or 2004, 2+2 was the best website on the whole internet as far as I was concerned. Really good players, great thinkers, sharing information and building a community. By the time you guys started thinking about what you wanted to do, it had pretty much devolved into what it is today, which is a very hateful, generally speaking, a hateful environment, and really particularly unfriendly to beginning players. So was that what sparked you to want to start your own separate forum?
Yeah, that was exactly it. Like we always joked, like we just really wanted a site where we could talk about poker, and people would just say fold pre when you posted a hand history, because that was like the joke response that everybody would give you, like fold pre. And it was really cool, and we kind of all got to be pretty good friends, and we did like sort of a meetup in Atlantic City at some point during that time, and that's when Diego and I met for the first time in person. And I think we had kind of started, I don't know if we'd really started talking about business ideas by then, but I know that at some point during that process, like we kind of realized like we both had sort of entrepreneurial aspirations. And Diego was like able to actually do web stuff, which I couldn't. Like he was sort of the smart tech guy and I was a marketing guy. And we're like, well, that's a pretty good combo.
So he had the brains and you had the beauty.
Pretty much.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so we just started to brainstorm ideas, and I remember we came up. I wish I still had that list. I think we made a list of probably like 30
I bet
ideas.
I bet I could find it because I'm sure I did it like on my Google Drive. I'll actually search while we talk, but I mean we did come up with like 30, 40 ideas. Some things like you steak was an idea we had. Like we came up with a bunch of ideas that are around today. We just didn't think it was feasible or couldn't tell if it would be worth our time and money. One of them, I think we talked about, we're giving away free ideas, but I don't think some of them were that great. But like we were talking about like insurance, like tournament insurance. So like if you bust out, like I don't know what our financial model on that was. It seems like an awful idea as I think about it, but we were thinking about some sort of like tournament insurance where you were guaranteed a minimum of your money back. Or I think it was actually, I've seen this idea. I think it was expanding the bubble was another idea that we came up with. Like we would pay, a certain number if you finished like, in 5% out of the bubble or something like that. So they had a lot of different poker ideas, but it was all like, hey, I love poker. I know how to do this thing. I would love to make poker, a central part of my life and something that I pursue it as because it's my passion. And we just came up with this big list. And Training Site was an obvious one because they were popping up at that point pretty frequently. I was a, huge fan of card runners. I was a huge fan of, what was that one? Poker Savvy. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
Yeah, Poker Savvy was like my favorite, actually.
Yeah, Poker Savvy was great. Those are the two that I think I frequented the most back then. And so we kept coming back to Training Site, and we were like, well, the market seems, there's a lot of people already doing training sites. Is it worth doing? But I think then we got the idea of, what, we love tournaments. Like, why don't we do a training site, but focus solely on tournaments and become known as the tournament training site. And that's that. Then we just started to like really develop that idea, and it became like the momentum became incredible on that. We really saw the lane, and we were like, while I have a little bit of technical chops, I'm a marketer too, and we both thought like we really there's a niche here. They're like no one's carved out tournament. Everyone's focusing on everything. And if we could just become specialized, maybe we have a place in the market. And which, obviously turned out to be true. But then Derek came up with the name. And once he did, that's it. I just thought it was a brilliant name. I remember you sending it over AIM, the instant message, the old instant message program. And we were just throwing names out there. I'll try to dig up the other name ideas we came up with. But you said, how about Tournament Poker Edge? I was like, wow. I just stared at it. I was like, that is a great name. And it went from there.
Yeah.
So you guys met on 2+2 virtually, and then you met in real life in Atlantic City and talked about possibly doing something together, realized you had a lot in common, and then decided to try to make something happen. This is an amazing story. I feel like nowadays everybody would just complain about what other people are doing on Twitter. So actually doing something themselves. So maybe it was good that social media hadn't really gotten that big by then.
Yeah, I joke because I'm pretty sure I started a Twitter handle from the beginning and a Facebook page, but the one thing I definitely remember is that when we started TPE, we had a MySpace page for Tournament Poker Edge. I don't know why or what the purpose of that was, but it went away pretty quick, obviously.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to expand a little bit too on what Diego's saying, I think one of the reasons we ended up settling on a training site was like for selfish purposes. We were kind of like, well, we like talking poker and we want to get better at poker, so let's start our own training site. And we always said, we hated like, as much as we loved some of those other training sites, we always hated like having to sit through like a week and a half worth of Raz videos before they started releasing tournament videos again, you know? So yeah, we just were kind of like, all right, worst case scenario, we end up building something that we can use. And best case scenario, maybe it actually makes some money or something.
Yeah. Well, let me parallel this with where I was at when you guys were first meeting online. I was playing both online and live, and I was really into Poker Road, which for those who don't remember, because I know that some of our listeners are too young to remember Poker Road, but Joe Stapleton kind of got his start there. Ali Nejad. They basically had a podcast. Gavin Smith, the late Gavin Smith, was on it. And, of course, the whole thing was founded by Joe Seabach using his father, Barry Greenstein's money.
Right.
Yeah, they used to release a weekly podcast where they would kind of goof off, talk about poker strategy, and I was an avid listener. I wasn't into training sites at that point yet, but I was reading a lot of books about poker and working with a coach. So that was where my poker training was at. So then I was talking to Joe Seabach about having a comedy show on Poker Road, because they actually ended up having a network of multiple different podcasts. And they already had a comedy thing, but what I wanted to do was a little bit different. And we almost had the contract finalized at the time when Black Friday happened. So after that, pretty much everything Poker Road just stopped because they didn't have any sponsors anymore.
Yep.
And they didn't see it as a viable business anymore. And then I had to wait 9 years to have a poker podcast.
You should have asked us earlier.
Well, instead, what happened is you guys kind of filled the void that was left when Poker Road died, and all of us players were out there like wanting to listen to strategy content and other, just poker news and whatever was going on. And the poker podcast world was very bare. You got to remember, listeners have to remember, this was a long time ago, and podcasting wasn't like now there are like 75 million poker podcasts, but back then it was like Poker Road was it. And then you guys came, and I was like, oh, this is cool. They pick on each other a lot, but they're kind of funny. And sooner or later, they do eventually talk about a hand or two.
Yeah.
And then I listened, and I grew with you guys. I was listening to you guys, and you guys, the shows got better and better. The podcast got better and better. And then they kind of stopped. And then that brings us to when I finally contacted Derek and said, look, we need to get that podcast going, man.
Yeah.
And man, am I glad we did.
Yeah.
It's been great.
It's been one of the best things that's happened since last year's World Series to me.
There you go.
I love being associated with you guys. And like you guys first met virtually online and then eventually in person, I hope to meet you all at the TPE meetup in Vegas. Because listeners might not even know this, but I haven't met most of you.
That's right, yeah.
Ever. That's the world we live in now. Face-to-face is a luxury, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, it took a while for some of the people that we started the site with for us to meet them. Just we were doing everything virtually. I mean, Derek and I was always New York, and he was in North Carolina. So while we hadn't met, we've probably met at this point maybe 15 times in person, right, Derek? Maybe.
Yeah, up till today.
So it's like, yeah, like once or twice a year for 9 years. And we did all this virtually. So it can be done, but it is nice to actually get that time in person. And we did a lot of, especially early on when we started getting together, as the site started taking off, it was helpful for us to kind of strategize where we're going to go next. And the podcast didn't start immediately. There were a couple of things that we kind of discovered along the way. One was the podcast, which started late in our first year. And then I think TPE University started in 2013. So those are things that kind of just naturally evolved from the original intention of the site. But as we started talking to more of the people who were using the site and seeing how they wanted to engage with us, we figured some things out there about the structure of what we brought to the table.
Well, Diego, you said that your background was in marketing.
Yeah, software marketing tech. I mean, as Derek said, I started my career as a developer, a programmer, but I wasn't great at it. I was okay, and so I knew enough to be dangerous, and then I got into the marketing side of software, but still know enough technically to put some things together, at least the early versions of the site before. We low investment early on, right? We weren't sure if it was going to take off, so we didn't spend a lot of money on developers. And then once it took off, we said, all right, this is a real thing. Let's get some real developers in here to build it out the right way.
Yeah. So at that time, there really was a need for a training site just for tournament players. Yep. And anytime I listened to any of the shows on Poker Road, they would cut to commercial, and then I would hear this homemade ghetto commercial. Going, hey, MTTers, are you looking for a site where you can learn about, And then,
I remember writing that script for him.
I read that. I mean, I listened to that, to him do that commercial probably a million times with different podcasts that I was listening to. But obviously the name was perfect. Tournament Poker Edge, stuck in my head from the first time I ever heard the name. And this was as a potential customer, as a person who was discovering the joy of listening to podcasts. Because probably the first podcast I ever listened to was Poker Road. And then when I had a void to fill, and there you guys were. But yeah, I remember the marketing because, it seemed like you guys were sponsoring a lot of other related podcasts with your website. That was really smart.
Yeah, and speaking of the podcast, one thing that's pretty cool, since it is our 9-year anniversary, is I was looking at the numbers a couple of days ago, and we're actually, I would say next week, we'll probably cross the 1 million listens mark on the podcast. So that's a lot of people who've had to sit through our rambling.
I remember dropping some Easter eggs in there too. Like I remember getting to the end of like a 3-hour podcast once and being like, if anyone makes it here, please, hit us up on Twitter and let us know you made it. And like for months after that, like 6 months later, someone would tweet at us that they got to the end. So we put in a lot of hours.
Yeah, I listened to every episode in its entirety from the very first one. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. Maybe I didn't tweet about it, but I was like, wow, these guys are really doing their thing. And you kind of gave a lot of not just poker strategy on the podcast. Of course, that's what it's always been focused on. By the way, guys, we are going to get to some strategy after we finish taking this romantic walk down memory lane. But what I found interesting was the way you guys interacted with each other. It felt like I was in a fraternity house or backstage, maybe in a locker room of a baseball team or something. Like it was just guys that really knew each other well and had a certain way of relating to each other that was it was fun to listen to. I don't really have relationships like that. Where just like everything is just like, I don't want to say anything nice ever. So I haven't.
Would you like us to call you once a week and talk for an hour?
Just put me down. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it it's been, and especially when we were doing them frequent, purely genuine, we would literally be talking for a half hour and then realize, you know what, why don't we turn on the recorder and start recording? We still, and to this date, everyone, has real close relationships, and we all know our place in the relationship.
Yeah.
To the sense, we all play our role, but we all genuinely like each other. At Casey's wedding, great time. We were all out there like that. That's one of the times we all were in the same place at the same time. And these guys, we built it, we worked on this thing together for a long time, and we're connected. We're almost family.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me that the guy who calls himself the big dog was the one that was kind of bullying everybody on that podcast.
Yeah.
But you could also tell, and I mean this, you could also tell that he cared about everybody and that he was really just in his own way. That's how he was trying to help you guys get better at poker. I mean, Casey's a great player, obviously, and he's a very, very passionate person. And when it comes to poker, like if you guys made a play that he didn't like, he would let you know. And sometimes it was comical to listen how hard he would, just rain fire on somebody who made a mistake. But also, I learned a lot from listening to the disagreements. Yeah. Once you guys started using Mark and some others that came on a little bit later, and they would sometimes push back with Casey, and that showed me that the things that I was simultaneously reading in poker books, like Ed Miller books and things, like, all right, so there's not always just one correct answer. Yeah. Sometimes in poker, it's like this play makes sense, but also there are actually merits to doing it this way as well. And where one may actually have the highest, or, the better EV or whatever, there are other things to think about, especially in tournaments, which are complicated. Yep. So,
another thing that those conversations taught me was that, you really, it's easy to make excuses or dispute what the feedback you're getting. Your ego can get in the way of learning. And putting yourself out on a podcast like that and bringing clear mistakes to a podcast, and then being able to handle that, I think, for me personally, really helped me, one, with my game, but two, just kind of become better at a lot of different things in my life, and, things that improvements in my career and just in general, because it's really easy to, kind of frame a situation in a way that soothes your ego when you make mistakes or do something wrong. But when you put it out there and you have, you're naked and you have Casey, blasting.
Whoa, wait, what?
What is that? Or?
Yeah. Okay, not on a live stream or anything like that, but but seriously, when you're out there and you put your mistakes out there, and then you have to face them. You can we brought some of the worst hands that we played there, and I think you have to do that to become better at anything, is to really objectively look at it, and then you have someone like Casey who will give you his objective opinion, whether you like it or not. Is something that you should bring more of into your life. So it was helpful for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yep.
And it wasn't always fun, like putting your, especially because we were never pros on the site, but we tried to be good at the game and still do, I guess. So yeah, to have somebody be like, you are the absolute worst poker player I've ever seen. But it was always with good intentions and good heart, so never took it personal.
Yep, yeah. Never took it personal.
And with that Canadian sort of, later, like sound like he hung up the phone on you later. Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to get Casey on, but he's got like 75 projects and 15 children now? I'm not sure.
He's definitely working his way up there.
Yeah, he's a little busy for me. I'm sure people would want to hear about the first time you guys decided to take your show on the road and go to Vegas for the World Series of Poker. What year was that, and how did it go? I mean, to me, like a phrase that's stuck in my head from all the hours of listening to your podcast long before I was ever even on the radar to be the host or something, is the TPE house.
Yeah.
There is, I mean, that should like go in a dictionary somewhere.
Yeah.
The
That was a
TPE
blast.
house. So tell me about the TPE house the first time and how it went, and let's get some never before heard stories from you guys about the TPE house.
Yeah, so I'm honestly not even sure exactly what year was the first year. I'm thinking it had to be the second year, because
It was definitely not the first year. I mean, we had just started in April, and we were not going out and getting a house a month and a half later.
Yeah,
so
that's a good
definitely
point.
not the first year. I think let's assume, well, what was it, 2000? So 2011 was a Black Friday year. So
Yeah.
would we have done it
Yeah.
the Black Friday year? It was such a weird time. It's really hard to say. Yeah, I think we might have, because if I remember correctly, people got their money back from PokerStars. Obviously didn't get it back from Full Tilt as fast, so to speak, to say the least. But people did have money from PokerStars, and people wrote. A lot of people were going out there to just kind of like take either a last stab at poker or see if they could turn something live. So I want to say it was 2011, and if it wasn't, it was definitely 2012. And I think the big thing that I don't know if we talked about, or one of the more interesting, is we tried to turn it into like the TPE live training module as well. Right. Do you remember that, Derek?
Yeah, I totally forgot.
Like, we did a whole workshop. We had 5 or 6 of the players, members, pay for a more extensive training, and we did it. But it was so much work.
Yeah.
It was so much work that everyone hated each other by the end.
That was one of the times where I can remember being like, this sucks.
Yeah, this is not worth it. And then I just kind of started thinking about how scalable it is. And I was like, well, we make a video and I put it on a site, and like thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, theoretically millions of people could watch this. We have to repeat this thing over and over again for 12 people. Yeah. We tried the workshop thing, and I was happy with the content. I was happy with the way it went, but we were just exhausted from it by the end. So that was something that we did that first year that we never did again.
One thing I always think about too, like when I think about the TPE house, is the fact that I can remember, like, before then, probably before we even started TPE, like probably on 2+2, like reading about guys who had all like moved in together in a house in Vegas or a house wherever to grind online poker and just like live poker 24/7. And I was like, man, I'm like married and I got a kid. Like, I'm never going to get to do that. Like, I'm never going to get to move in with a bunch of dudes or dudettes and like grind online poker and just literally talk poker 24/7. And then somehow it happened.
Yep.
I was like, oh, maybe I will. But yeah, I mean, it was a like kind of a big thing. Like, I think that first year I went out the entire summer, so it's like it is kind of weird to go to your wife and be like, hey, honey, I'm gonna go to Vegas. She's like, oh, okay, how long? 2 months. Like,
yeah, I've gone almost the whole summer. I'll see you in August. All right.
And I've done it every year since. For sort of varying time frames. Like, I've been out as little as probably 3 weeks and as much as the whole thing. But yeah, it's just a blast. Like, it's so much fun. I mean, it's almost cliche now to call it poker summer camp, but that really is what it is.
That is what it is. So when you first had the house, whether it was 2011 or 2012, who were the original frat boys drinking it up and talking about poker until all hours of the night and bouncing bad beat stories off of each other? Who was in that original house?
Man, that was a whole different crew at the time. It would have been me.
You and Kate. Was Casey at the first one?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, Casey was there. Okay. So you and Casey.
And it was pre-Mark, so Mark wasn't there. It would have been Hagbard, Celine.
Yeah.
who's
Ween.
no longer in the with the company. In fact, I don't think plays poker anymore.
Yeah.
A guy named Ween, who was one of the original pros. Sean Hendrickson, Cougars, and then yourself, and that might have been it.
And was Tim there?
I'm trying to remember if Tim was there the first year or not.
Probably T-Twist, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was. I'm pretty sure he was. Because I feel like I kind of remember him being there for the training.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then do we have any non-TPE? Like those were the core pros, but we started adding pros pretty quickly at that point.
Yeah, and I don't think any of them moved into the house. I do remember Flo's moving in towards the end.
Yeah, because
he wasn't ever really part of TPE or anything. Yeah, he's just kind of a hermit, so he just put himself on the couch and never left.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember, these guys would go there for the whole summer. For the whole WSOP. I was, I never quit my day job. So I was kind of juggling multiple things. So I wasn't able to go for the whole summer, but I would go for about a week. And to me, it was like, as Derek said, it was like the best week of the year. I just look forward to it all year. We go play poker in the day, most of the time, bust out, come back, barbecue in the backyard, have a couple beers, go to PTs. I just look forward to it every year. But I remember that first year, Derek always would load up on the swag and bring it with him, and used to drive there in the beginning every time with like boxes of swag, right?
I shipped it a couple times and I drove it a couple times.
Yeah. But one year, I think it was the first year, Derek decides that we're going to get TPE stress balls. And so he has this, 4 boxes of stress balls, which within a day or two became just weaponized. And we're like, you couldn't walk anywhere without getting nailed in the head with a stress ball. So it really was like a frat house. A lot of fun. We had to come to like agreements. Like you could get hit with the ball if you're on the sofa, but if you're in your room sleeping, you can't get hit. But if you're sleeping on the sofa, you could. So there was all kinds of havoc and mayhem going on there.
Yeah.
So who was on the rules committee that helped you decide where it's okay to kill somebody with a stress ball?
Yeah, we kind of had to like pretty quickly start to establish rules. Like I remember that being one. I also remember that like messing with anybody's laptop or computer was like strictly prohibited because you get people like you just have your Facebook account open or something and somebody would go in and do something like, all right, none of us need to like get in trouble over any of this stuff. So yeah, I think those were the 2 big ones. Like you couldn't go in anybody's room, and you couldn't mess with anybody's computer. Pretty much everything else was on the table.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, the best thing was talking about hands into the night in the backyard. It's just the best thing. I mean, you think the podcast is fun when we sit and talk about hands. We would sit in the back with, like I said, with a couple beers, barbecue, and I mean, not even our bust out hands, but the hand that was like really just perplexing us, right? Or you just felt like you could have played better. And then you'd have, everyone who was there loved the game of poker, right? And just loved to deconstruct these hands. It's what we did on the podcast, but it's what we would do in the backyard. I just remember sitting with Mark and talking about a pair of 7s for like 4 hours, looking at all the different ways that hand could have gone and how we should have played it. It was just awesome. So much fun.
And every accomplished player I know has friends that are willing to go deep into a hand for a long time and really analyze and really think about it. Now with the advent of solvers and things like that, it might not be as much of a debate because you can kind of just plug it into the computer and figure out what's more or less quote unquote correct. But lately on the podcast here, we've been talking about how there is a difference between being unexploitable and maximizing your expected value. So, even there, I think even when somebody can prove that something is GTO, it still doesn't necessarily mean it's what you should do.
Yeah. I've been wondering about that myself a lot recently because I do see the trend toward, obviously there's a trend towards GTO that's been going on for a while, and always the back of my head is it, I mean, I guess you can't go wrong by being GTO, but in an isolated situation, what are the routes of exploit to play that could be correct or actually even more suitable for that particular moment? So it's interesting that you're talking about that.
Yeah, we've been talking about it a lot lately because it's a question I've been struggling with. I mean, is it better to sit down knowing that? I mean, now first of all, GTO is not solved. Like no limit hold'em is not solved.
Yeah.
So even though you can maybe isolate a certain exact spot, if I have 12 big blinds on the bubble or whatever, break down the exact spot, then you might be able to solve one particular spot mathematically and say, I know for sure that this is the best play. But more often than not, all GTO, all game theory can do for you is make sure that you can't lose.
Right.
No matter what I do,
right.
I can't lose. But that doesn't mean this is the best way for me to play. Just because I can't lose doesn't mean I couldn't win more.
Right.
So, there are many games where it would just be silly to play a GTO style when your opponents are so clearly exploitable.
Right.
So we're all kind of struggling with that. I think the whole poker world is struggling with when should I play like a robot computer and when should I play like a human who's playing against other humans. And until everybody gets so good at the game that everybody's playing at or near the theoretically correct like frequencies or whatever, then it's especially in live poker, it's going to be more correct. It's going to be more profitable anyway to go ahead and leave yourself open to being exploited by people who are never going to exploit you.
Right.
So
absolutely.
That's what we do. So maybe that's a good place for us to get into your hand, Derek, unless you guys want to share anything else about the 9. Well, let me ask you this before we do the hand, actually. Did you ever think that you would last 9 years with all these other training sites dropping dead left and right in the wake?
I don't think I'm not sure we ever thought that far ahead. I think honestly, the only question we ever really asked ourselves is like, will we lose money? Well, because I can kind of remember saying like, man, if we just break even, that'd be cool. We'll have done something. We'll have learned a few things.
You weren't relying on it as your sole source of income.
No. But I mean, I will say we were successful pretty fast. Pre Black Friday, it became very clear that it was working, and we were growing really quickly, and we were very happy with where we were by the end, by day 364. And then then Black Friday hit, and it was, things cratered really, really quickly, because everyone's didn't know what was going on. So I think the first, literally people the next day were canceling subscriptions left and right, and then even those who weren't, they would see the next bill and they would be like, oh, I forgot I had that thing. Let me cancel it now. Right. so it was within a year, we were 1/5 of our member base. And so at that point, we were pretty sure it was going to die pretty quickly. But prior to that, it was going so well that I think, and we made an affiliate deal with Card Player Magazine. I'm pretty sure I speak for Derek when I say we both saw the path to TPE becoming, the full-time thing and then expanding beyond training. Perhaps there's a cash game sister site. We were like, okay, this is working. I think this could become something that becomes the thing. And as poker grows, we'll continue to grow with it. But I do think there was the intention. But then after Black Friday, if you had asked me in August of 2011, I said we'd probably have 6 months left, maybe 9 months. But then we kind of shifted our strategy. We did, start to go out to Europe a little bit more. We signed a couple of European players to make videos. And we didn't necessarily change our marketing, our content, but we did advertise a little bit more there. And then, live play started to take off a little bit more. And so we saw the US players come back a little bit. And then our pros had some really good years in 2012, 13, 14. And it got back to where it was. But it was, it took a long time to get back to where it was, but it never, it didn't have the same growth rate that it did. So sorry, long answer to your question, but we would have expected it to have died pretty quickly after Black Friday.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And I think the biggest thing too, like in terms of adding anything else before we go into strategy, I would definitely just say like thanks to all the members who've been around.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally have people who've been with us for 8 years.
Call them the OGs.
Yep. I would love to go. In fact, I probably should at some point. I would love to go find the longest member and like send him something cool or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like it really. I think a big reason why we've been around so long and why we were successful in the beginning is that we always put a lot of focus on the community aspect of TPE. We've always done a meetup every year in Vegas. We even I remember one year in Atlantic City we invited players during like a circuit event or something to like breakfast to basically give us feedback on the business, like what do you guys want to see more of, what don't you like, what's frustrating for you. And I think doing that kind of stuff really set us apart from, a lot of the competition.
I mean, we were the best customer. We were the customer. Like Derek and I knew exactly. We tailored it to the type of people like us who loved poker, maybe didn't have enough friends in their life that played poker, didn't know who to talk to about it. We were looking for a community. It's evolved a little bit beyond that today. But at least, early on, I think it really reflected the product that we wanted, and we knew what intuitively what to make. So we found that the members really latched on. Those early members were really, really strong advocates for us too.
Yeah.
You guys still don't have any friends.
No.
Now we just talk to each other.
Just people like Big Dog, and you can hear how he talks to us.
He's like the big brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really big brother.
Yeah.
But it's all love, and it comes from love. Actually, I can remember many years ago, one of my poker mentors, coaches, is Anton Wigg from Sweden. And I asked him one day, I was like, is there anybody that when you play, you just feel like you never win against that particular player? Like, when he or she comes to your table, are you just like, oh no, I can never win a pot against this person? And he said, Casey, yeah, Big Dog Pocket 5. I never know what he's up to. He just loves the game.
Yeah, he does love the game.
Yeah, and I know what Anton means by that. Like, Casey loves the game. Like, to him, it's always about the spot.
Yep.
It's it's not about laddering up, and it's not about what the book says I should do. He's in it. He's in the game, and if he thinks he has a spot, he doesn't care what 2 cards he has.
Yeah.
And
so true.
Yeah, he's not GTO. He's not a GTO player. No. He's like the opposite.
He's probably way more profitable than a computer with his cards would have been, because he's exploiting people's tendencies and capitalizing on their mistakes and maximizing his win rate that way. So I just remember when Anton said that, and I said, wow, that's really interesting, because I don't know what it would be. I've never played against Casey, but I don't think it would be easy. How do you put him on a range? Because I don't know if he's playing the right range or if he's feels like he's got a spot.
Yeah.
There's such a thin line between being a overly aggressive, loose aggressive fish and playing that hyper aggressive but knowing where you're at all times style. And Casey always seems to be on the right side of that line.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, there were so many times when we were doing hand discussions where he would say what he would do, and I'd be like, well, I can never do that. So
yeah.
Thanks for the feedback, though.
I don't have the cojones.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about what kind of cojones we do have, because we've got a hand. Why don't you talk us through it, Derek? And whenever it's your time to make a decision, we'll talk about what we think you should do before you do it.
That sounds good. Yeah. So this is from the 20K guaranteed on America's Card Room. from, I think, a few months ago. I played this hand. We are currently sitting with 100 big blinds at 75, 150, and we are in the cutoff with Queen 10 of spades. It folds all the way around to us, and we raise to 399, so I guess about 2.5x, which I think everybody's raising Queen 10 of spades from the cutoff 100 big blinds deep, I would assume.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think we need to spend too much time on that aspect.
I'll take this part. Raise. Go ahead. You take the tough part, Clayton.
See, it's this kind of great analysis that you can get at Tournament Poker Edge.
That's why I never made a video.
So raised
yeah,
from the off with Queen 10. That's why you guys stayed in business for 9 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, that's going to be the new tagline on the new version of the website we're building. It's going to just say, raised from the cutoff with Queen 10 suited.
So is this like a $20 buy-in or
I believe it's a $22 tournament.
Okay.
As I recall.
All right. And
so, I do want to say too, we're not building a new version of the website. I don't want to get anybody out there to get excited and be like, "When's the new site coming out?"
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
All right. So, yeah. So you have. Do you remember what you kind of stack you would start with in a tournament like this?
Probably started with 10K, and right now we have 15. So we've chipped up a little.
All right. So it's still pretty early in the game, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's 75, 150 with a 15 ante, and we have like 100 big blinds. So we raise with
we raised to 399, about 2.5x, and we get 3-bet by the button to 12.15, so about 3x. He's running relatively like normal numbers. I mean, maybe a little limpy. He's running 23.9 with a 4% 3-bet. So it's not like he's super 3-bet heavy. I don't know if I love. Well, I guess first, what would you guys do in this spot? The blinds both fold, by the way.
Okay, so it's just folded back.
Do you have an image at all? I mean, do you have any image that we should know about?
My image is probably relatively snug. I'm running 23-17, so again, not aggro, but not like super nit either. Just sort of really regular numbers.
Okay. Yeah, very reggy numbers there. You go first, Diego. What do you want to do about this 3-bet?
Okay, I'm just going to call. Evaluating options. I'm not going to fold. I think we're deep enough to play this. I think it, could flop reasonably well. For us, I think it's too strong to fold. And I don't think I want to get out of, either fold to a 5-bet or get called and play it out of position. So that's my rationale.
Yeah, I think it's good rationale. I think under these circumstances, I would actually fold. And the reason why is I'm kind of old school about certain things. And I can just remember so many years ago, like one of the first really big internet superstar players, David Benefield, used to write articles for Card Player, which I used to subscribe to and read.
Yep.
And he talked a lot about one thing you should never do. Now, this was, 2007, 2008. One thing you should never do is call a 3-bet from out of position. And I thought that was extreme. But he said if you never do that, then you never end up playing with what's probably the worst hand from definitely the worst position in an inflated pot with an opponent who gets to go after you. Now, the case for doing it is that your hand is so playable, right? I mean, we know if we hit the flop or not with this hand. It's got good flopability. You could flop a flush draw, you could flop, a top pair with a decent kicker. But the argument for folding is that so many times you're going to miss the flop and just have to check and fold, and now you're going to lose all these blinds in this pot. And the main reason that I want to fold is the sizing. I don't know what standard sizing online is these days because I'm not really playing that much. I did jump on ACR not too long ago, but I'm not exactly the best person to ask what's going on online. But you only made it $3.99 and he bumped it all the way up to 12-15, which is more than 3 times your bet, which at least in the live realm, that would be considered a pretty serious 3-bet.
Yeah, I think it definitely screams strength.
Yeah. So if we know he's strong and we only have Queen 10 and he's not that out of line with his 3-betting, maybe this is just I mean, I hate to fold such a beautiful hand with 2 suited broadways, but I don't know. I mean, am I too tight? I just think I would throw it away and play the next hand.
I definitely see I think there's merit to both of your responses. I mean, I think when it's Queen 10 off, it becomes a pretty easy fold, and for some reason, suited just, I guess, plays so much easier.
It gives you a lot of things you could semi-bluff later on, which could be more of a noose to hang yourself with. But
true. I think also being this deep helps too. I mean, I think if we're 50 big blinds, it just becomes a different situation, or obviously 40 or 30 becomes even worse. But yeah, I definitely I don't have a strong opinion either way. I mean, I know what I do in the moment, but I if there was a Bible to tell me exactly what to do with it, and it said fold, I wouldn't be surprised, and if it said call, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine Assassinato would find some way to go through every hand you've ever played on the internet and see how much you've lost by calling out of position and then missing stops and checking and folding.
Right.
So that's not to say that it's a terrible call either, because like you guys have both pointed out, we have 100 blinds. And I agree that it's a worse call the shorter your stack is.
Yep.
So, and I think it's a more justifiable call with 200 big blinds. So definitely stack size makes it not terrible, but to me, I try to stay out of those spots. I don't like to not be the one in control in a hand. And so this will just be okay, well, I'm going to call and hope I hit. And if I don't hit, I'm probably not going to win the pot.
Yeah. Yep. That's fair.
Yeah.
So we do decide to call at the time. So there's 27.90 in the pot now. And again, we have Queen 10 suited out of position. And the flop comes down Ace, King, Jack with 2 clubs.
So it's a pretty good flop for our.
Yeah, it's not the worst flop I've ever seen. A little more rainbow would be preferred, but I'll take it.
Yeah. So we have no chance to make a flush. That's the only bad news I can find on this flop.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So now having called out of position, I think we just want to check every time. Let the 3-better take a stab at it, right?
That seems standard to me. What do you think, Diego?
Yeah, totally agree. And I'm a little out of practice, so I'll just throw out there. I mean, I guess, are we going to check raise here, or are we going to, just call and fill the pot later? What do you? I guess. Yeah. Sorry to drive the conversation there, but that's the first thing I think. I'm like,
no, it's a great question. What is the play, Derek?
Yeah. What is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, because we're so deep. I don't mind the idea of going for the check raise right now to try to build this pot up. Obviously, this flop is really good for a 3-betting range.
Yeah.
And if he has something like 9s, well, we're probably not going to get anything else out of him anyway.
Yeah.
At this point. So even if we just smooth call here and then check the turn, then he's just going to check back and then we're going to bet and he's going to fold, etc.
Yeah.
So I think we go for the check raise right here on the flop. Hoping that he has, flopped a set or has top 2 or anything, or even Ace Queen, etc. That would be my play.
I agree. And with a second to think about it, I think I'm now advocating a check raise even more because there's a lot of shutdown cards on the turn that will completely freeze him. And if you check raise now, the flush draw that's out there could entice him to think that you're bluffing. And he's got a good chance of having 2 pair, right? And so he's going to just probably get it in at this point. Or maybe just call and see on the street. But maybe you're too deep for him to jump right all in. But I do think there's just so many shutdown cards on the turn that you're going to want to try to get all the money in here if you can.
Yeah, I love thinking about what to do with the nuts. It's so rare to have this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great problem. Like, just imagining myself in this situation. I mean, obviously, when you have the nuts, you can't make too many big mistakes. I mean, we're not going to fold, so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't see any reason to lead out. I don't think I would have much of a leading range on this board.
Yeah, I would agree.
But this is a board that hits a lot of our opponents' three betting range, right? He could have aces, he could have kings, he could have jacks. He could certainly have three bet with ace king, ace jack. I don't know if most players with a 4% three bet range could have king jack, but I'm not going to rule it out either.
Right.
I think we're going to check, and I agree with you guys. I hope he bets a lot, and I want to raise a lot because he probably hit this flop pretty hard.
Yeah. So he does go. When we check, and he does go ahead and bet. He bets pretty small though, 930 into a pot of basically 2,800. So pretty small, which it tells me either it would tell me two things. One, he does have some hand like eights or something where he's just going to bet, and if he gets three bet, he's going to fold. Or he has a strong hand, and he's trying to get us to three bet, or just make sure he gets value from my entire flatting his three bet range. So I don't actually mind. I'm not that bummed when I see his sizing, because if it is those two options for why he's betting that size, then again we're not getting called. We're not getting any more chips out of him if he's got an under pair. And if this is a value bet, then that's awesome because we have the nuts. So I think we can raise, and I think we can raise on pretty big, expecting to see him fold immediately or eventually get all these chips in.
Yeah. So then, if that's the case, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Diego. Jump in.
I was just gonna say I really like the logic there. So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So when he bets here, if he's got a hand he's not going to continue with, he's taking his one little continuation bet. And when we raise to any size, he's going to fold. And if we just flat, then he's not going to bet anymore or put another chip in anyway. So we might as well be optimistic and try to get him for some chips. I like a really big check raise here. And the reason why is because I'm trying to figure out how to get this whole 14,000 in. And with him only starting the action with 930 as a bet size, I don't stand much chance of doing that unless I raise, enough to start getting some of these chips in the middle. So we've already put in 1,200 of our 14,000. So we've got 13,500 left. I think a good place to start might be making it 3,000 here, or maybe 3,300, pretty big sizing. Because again, what's he going to do? He might worry that you have Queen 10 if you make a big raise, but if he's got a set or two pair, and he's not going anywhere, even though he's worried.
I'd like to make that one last move. I think that's what he's got to. He can't just call and see. We don't want to make it small enough where he can just call and see the next card. We're going to want him to make the one big move. Derek, I forgot to ask, was it 100 bigs effective, or did he have less than you? Do you know what his stack is to start?
He had a little more than me to start.
Okay, all right. Okay.
I think. So, yeah.
Yeah,
but
so
it's pretty close, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I like a bet that's big enough to, force him to decide whether to try to, put an end to the hand here, if he thinks he's putting an end to the hand here, or if he's happy to get it all in, as opposed to just call.
If we make it 3,000, I mean, it's not terrible for him if he wants to call with some of his hands. Especially, he might be worried enough about our hand that he doesn't want to just shove and pray that we don't have the nuts.
Mm-hmm.
What's good for him is what's good for us, I should say, is if he has the very top of his range, like pocket aces, pocket kings, we would make this same play with pocket jacks. So, he's close enough to the nuts that he's never folding if he's got one of those hands. And like I said before, I think we should be optimistic and try to, because it doesn't much matter if he doesn't have the top of his range, we should just play this hand assuming that he does.
Right.
Agreed.
I think that's perfect. And I agree with both of you that we want to go big on the 3-bet, and I think I could have, the check raise. I think I could have gone more like you were saying, like at least 3K, maybe even like 3,200 or something. I went 27.99, which I think is fine, but I think a little bit bigger is just going to make it a little easier to get all the chips in. I think, especially if he does just flat here.
If it's any consolation, like that was my first thought too, and then I changed it when I heard Clayton's rationale. But it's kind of like my default there too, and I think it's probably too small.
Yeah.
So guys, that's interesting that you just said that the default. I feel like, and I'm not, saying this about you in particular, but I find that so many players I talk poker with nowadays, they kind of revert to the default without really thinking about what different bet sizing could do for them. It's like it's too easy to just say, well, when I raise 2.5 times the pot. When I bet a third of the pot. Whatever your default happens to be. It's just different bets do different things. And when I have the nuts, I always think, what's the best way for me to try to get the whole stack in? I mean, that should always be the goal when you flop the nuts.
You know what's interesting about that though is that there's the balance between. There's a reason why we use defaults, right? It's because we can only handle so much cognitive pressure. Like we can only handle so much cognitive processing, right? Before our brains get fatigued and we can't respond to all stimuli, right? So I think as a shortcut, we develop these defaults. So what I'm interested in is how do you train your brain to break out of those preset patterns at the right times? Like this is a good time. Like what's the signal that you can give your brain to say, don't just do what you always do here. This is a unique situation, and you should be thinking slightly differently. And I don't know how to do that because usually you realize it in retrospect that it was a unique situation. And I think it's hard to always be on. You have to have some shortcuts, otherwise you can't function. So how do you break out of it at the right time? Maybe it's just continuing to look back at hands like this and realizing where the inflection points were, and then you'll see them in the future as they come up.
What do you think about that, Derek?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, the number of times where I've done hand history reviews, either on this podcast or on training videos or whatever, where I go, man, if I had just had like this 5 minutes or 10 minutes instead of the 20 seconds that I had to think this through, I would have played it completely different. And I also think, there's always I hate using this excuse, but like I've talked about it a million times on my videos with Mark. I stream, I play 8 tables or whatever. Yeah. There's so many times where it's just kind of like, okay, I know I want to go for the check raise here. I check, he bets. Oh, okay, now it's time for me to check raise. What's a good size? Oh, I don't know, 3x.
Yeah.
Like you're just moving along so fast. But I think live one tabling, I would probably do this all a little bit differently. And I think also, like I said, if I was online and I had, a 2-minute time counter instead of 10 seconds, I would do it completely different too.
Yeah, well, that's a great, that's really good analysis of why this happens. When you're playing more than one table online and you're also trying to entertain your Twitch audience.
Yeah.
I think as Diego mentioned, we only have so many brain cells that we can engage at once.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then I think something that does fall by the wayside with online poker is the nuances of different bet sizing and how they can offer your opponent different pot odds, tell a different story, help you accomplish whatever your goal happens to be in different ways when it's so easy. And the sites make it easy. Here's the half pot button, or you can click 1/3 of the pot button, whatever. And if you're playing 8 tables, you need to be clicking those buttons, or you're probably going to time out somewhere. So
that's the HUD feature I want, right? Like I want it to ring and say, this is a spot. This is something worth your brain. This is is get off autopilot and pay attention to this because I've observed a pattern here. based
Like
on.
it's going to pop up the "Are you sure?" question mark.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's all just in terms of service, right? Of the sites, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you can't do that, but that'd be the HUD I want. The one that tells me, like, this is interesting and you should.
I just want the old school Microsoft paperclip to jump out and be like, "Do you really want to bet half the pot?"
Yeah. Are you sure?
It looks like you're trying to make a mistake. You want to?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But okay. But yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's not impossible to get this stack in now that
Right.
we've made it $27.99. But I just think it would be a little easier if we put in a few more hundred. So.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right.
But we do go with the $27.99 and the villain calls. So we go to the turn with 8,388 chips in the middle. And the turn is the ace of spades. So now the board reads Jack, King, Ace, Ace, 2 clubs. Not our favorite card in the world, because, we did say that a lot of what he could have had was sets and 2 pairs, and that means all of that just got there, except King Jack, I guess.
That's a bad card.
Yeah, this is a terrible card. We said before that his range for calling our check raise on the flop would be big hands.
Yeah.
And like we definitely knew he would throw away, like, I think somebody said pocket eights, right? Yeah, that's a no-brainer bet fold in his shoes. Do we think he could have 3-bet pre-flop with something like king, queen, ace, queen, ace 10? Are there hands that we can beat? Are there, that's the wrong question. Are there many hands that we can beat that are in his range that we're still beating now that the board paired the ace?
And before you answer that, Derek, was it the ace of clubs or was it a king and jack? Like was the ace club?
Oh, king jack of clubs, ace of diamonds, ace of spades.
Okay. So he could have he could have the ace of clubs and like a king. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Or he could have ace 10 clubs, like ace club 10 club. So he could be on a 4-card flush here. I'm just trying to think of what he has that's not there right now.
That is true. That's like the one, I won't say the one hand, but one of the few hands that we're still ahead of, like ace 10, ace 9 suited, ace 8 suited. Like maybe people 3-bet those from the button this deep. They probably do actually.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So we do beat some ace X. That's cool.
And that's something that would call here, I think, as opposed to fold and shut down. So okay. All right.
Especially if he has a flush draw.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's why I was.
Yeah, but I think Derek might, if I'm not mistaken, I think Derek feels like he might get action from an ace 10 that doesn't have a flush draw.
Sure. Right.
Yeah, or an ace 9, ace 8.
Yeah, I think that's still possible. Also, just to like sort of as we're thinking about our decision here, just to give the listeners an idea of sort of stacks and everything. So there's 88, let's call it 8,400 in the middle. We have 10.6K behind, and the villain has 14.4K. So, and we're out of position, so we have to decide what are we doing now on what I think all agree is probably the worst turn, except maybe the ace of clubs would be worse. Do we want to lead here now? Keep taking the lead to the aggression, or are we now going to check and kind of see what this guy thinks about an ace on the turn?
Well, let me ask you this. If we lead, are we going to fold if he raises? Or, the problem is we've successfully managed to get a good chunk of our stack into this pot. We're right at 1/3. Our next bet is going to get us up to like 1/2 of our stack in this pot with a straight. So it's not like we're doing this with one pair. I don't know if I can do that and then fold profitably and sleep at night.
Yeah. I feel the same way, but I also hate the idea of checking because we're pretty much just giving up on the pot, which maybe we should. Maybe, if we agree this is the worst card, then maybe it's time to just give up. But I like it. If we check, he's going to bet his ace 10.
Right. So if we check, we should be planning to I mean, yeah, it is the worst card, and it's the whole reason this hand is so
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, playing the nuts on the flop was fun, but now we really have something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I am afraid that we're beat, but I'm not. I'm not really planning to fold a straight.
I mean, I guess we could bet really small, like bet like 2250 or something, and then fold to a shove. I mean, we'll still have like 60, 70 bigs behind or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, we're still sitting on 100 big blinds
Yeah. I
here.
mean, I can't
Actually,
see.
no, we're not. That's what we started the hand with. My bad.
But I can't see you betting 2200 and him bluff shove. I mean, like, I guess some people have that in them, but I would think that's elite.
Right.
You know,
I do it. Actually, I'm not kidding. I do that kind of stuff all the time. Like, if I think that uh, a guy is like betting so much less on the turn than he bet on the flop because he's afraid and actually doesn't like the turn and just doesn't want to check to me, that's something
Yeah.
that, depending on my opponent, that's a big part of my game, exploiting bets that I think are defensive or
right?
scared bets.
You are elite, my friend.
Yeah, because that's the exact kind of spot where that, like we were talking about Big Dog and how he just abuses spots. Like if he sees a guy bet like 2500 into the spot, he's just gonna be like, yeah, later, all in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take it now. Thanks. It's
Yeah.
funny that you said elite because earlier I thought you said that you thought it was a leak.
Oh no, I was like, that's that's a strong play. If you can detect that and do it on a bluff, a lot of people just don't have that in their arsenal.
It's also super exploitable because
Sure.
if you want to raise you, all you have to do is bet small.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, the cool thing for him is that even if he's doing it essentially as a bluff, well, I guess it wouldn't really be a bluff, but let's just say he has like ace nine. I mean, the guy still has a ton of outs when we snap him off. Well, unless we have ace king or ace jack, but we aren't going to have that very often when he has an ace. So, like, yeah, even when if we make it 2500, he shoves, like he's never dead, most likely.
A lot
So
of players would take your line on the flop with a flush draw, and then bet really small
True.
turn as trying to set the price to try to see if he can hit his flush on the river.
yeah, very
You
true.
don't see it as much when the board pairs like that, but it does happen. So, I mean, he could easily put you on a flush draw and just try to protect his three of a kind with a big raise if you bet
Yeah.
small here. So
So I got to tell you, my gut is check fold, and I'm not sure I can verbalize it. Why? I just think he'll be happy to take a free card. Well, will he be? Let's see. If he's now that I think through it, if he's on the draw, it's a perfect spot for him to take it away. Although you 3-bet, so I'd be afraid to just try to take it on the turn if I were him. I'm sorry, you raised the flop, so I'd be afraid to bet on the turn if I might take the free card there. So I'm sorry, I know I'm talking out loud and thinking through it, but my intuition is that this hits him really, really hard. And if he shows strength, I'm probably just going to fold. I could be wrong in this where Casey probably yells at me, be wrong on the podcast, but guess that's what I'm just telling you what I would do in game.
Right. No, I think it's a reasonable line. Like, I mean, if we're so convinced that so much of his range just improved, then it can't be the worst thing.
And I think
I'm
he asked the question I asked a few minutes ago, guys, which is, what hands does he call a check raise with on the flop that we are still beating now that the board paired? So, and the answer to that question will tell us how we should respond to further heat from him.
You're clarifying why you're helping clarify why, because I think the hands that do call that often that we're still ahead of often check behind here. That's why if I check and he raises, if I check and he bets, that implies to me that this hit him hard. and he's ahead now. But I think the cards that we're ahead of, the cards that, are maybe an ace, well, I don't know, but the cards that we're ahead of, like take a free card, especially all the flush draws. We'll take a free card here, and maybe the ace is bet if a bare ace bets here, but I think it's mostly the draws that bet behind here, and that the draws take a free card here, and the ones that bet are the ones that actually are ahead of us now.
Yeah, that's fair points. I think ace 10 is the one thing that we'll still bet that we're ahead of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that all of his three of a kinds will bet on the turn because we check raise the flop, and then as you even said a minute ago, Derek, we check raise the flop and then look like we gave up on the turn.
Right.
We hardly ever do check raise and then stop betting.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think our check is just going to entice a lot of. I don't know this guy, and I don't really know how to read HUDs well enough to. Answer my own question, but it seems to me that in a live game, if you check raised me on the flop and I had something like ace, eight of spades that I had whatever, some suited ace that I decided to three bet my button, hoping to take it down, but then you called and then I flopped an ace and you check raised me, but I thought you might have a flush draw, and I'm going to call you now on the flop and see what you do on the turn.
Right.
Because I think my pair of aces might still be good. And now I have three of them, and you check to me. I'm not checking back. I'm betting again.
But I guess my argument is that it's only ace 10 that is the bare ace that, it's unlikely to be ace queen because you have a queen. It's still possible, but right. It's less likely to be ace king and ace jack. But there's two of those, and then ace 10 is the only one that really the ace that I'm ahead of.
Right.
Except, okay, let me say what I'm saying. If it's ace king or ace jack, I'm behind now. If it's ace 10, I'm ahead. If it's ace queen, I'm ahead, but it's unlikely to be ace queen because I have a queen. And ace 10, I'm not so sure he's three betting every time. So, all right, I think we've analyzed this spot, Derek. Tell us what happens next, please.
I'm not ready for that. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay.
For that.
Go.
Push back just a little bit because I think that a lot of players would three bet with any suited ace pre-flop against a cutoff open. And I'm on my button. I have ace six of hearts. Right. A lot of players do that.
Yeah,
now this guy, his three bet range or percentage is only 4%, so he might not be as aggressive in these spots as I am, but I'm not ready to say that it's only ace 10,
That's fair.
Yeah. All right, but now we can go on. Sorry.
Fair enough.
All right, so we opted to check, and I would love to tell you in game what I was thinking. I'm assuming it was something along the lines of what Diego said, but hard to say. And the villain bets 2,800.
So small. Oh God, that sucks.
And that's kind of what we were talking about. Like, well, okay, now what are we doing? So I don't know. What are we doing?
All right. So to clarify, he's bet 2,800 into a pot of 8,400.
Yeah.
So that's a really small bet. We have to try to interpret this small bet, and I don't know in what universe we can do that.
I mean, my first instinct would based on all the information we've been given so far, and now based on this bet size, it just looks so value-y.
Yeah.
Is he if he what's he trying to get to fold that's good with 2,800?
If he's good and he thinks you're good, it's the perfect bet to make you think that he's doing that. That's the only way I could because this does look like the perfect setup for a river. Pot size bet. Well, I guess would it be pot size? No, it'd be less than pot size, but it would be a pretty decent part of the pot. Your stack.
Yeah. If we were to call, there would be 14K in the middle, and we have 7.8 behind.
Right.
So it'd be barring the river literally being like an ace or like I don't know, something being I don't know how we ever fold if we're calling now.
This is the kind of bet I make when I think the person doesn't know what they're doing, and I have the nuts, and I just think they're just clicking buttons and they're just coming along, and then they don't realize where they get to at the end on the river.
Right.
Or what I try to do against good players is trying to make them think I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So I
Later. Yeah.
So all right,
Yeah.
I keep my original stance. I think I'm just folding here.
Yeah. Anyone who's been listening for any number of episodes, you know that I don't like to fold big hands for small bets. But I think I'm going to throw this away too, because I know I'm going to have to face the bet as well. And it's like I hate to fold a big hand.
Yeah.
But my hand used to be a lot bigger.
Right.
Than it is right now. With all this information I have now, I guess I'm just, all right, maybe I got owned with this little 2,800 into 8,400, but that's okay. It's early in this tournament, and I'll just, I'll get them next time. I think it's time to fold.
Sometimes you just get owned.
I think I agree with both of you. I think folding is definitely best.
I know it. The way you're saying that, I know what that means.
And so we call it.
I could have finished those. It's been 9 years, buddy. We're finishing each other's sentences.
Yeah.
We're finishing each other's bad lines.
Yeah.
Well, now the plan
I
has to be to call again any river. I think.
Yeah, I just got so I know exactly what it was. I'm sitting there looking at my computer going, oh, great, that's the worst turn card. Well, screw you, I call.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a frustration call, I'm pretty sure. I think, going back to what we were talking about earlier, like, if I had a lot of time to look at this, and honestly, I don't even know that I needed that much time, but I clearly needed more. I think this would be a fold, but in the heat of the moment, I was like, screw you, I call.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, now there's 14K in the middle. We have 7.8 behind. And I guess if you could ask for the worst possible river card, it would be a club.
Nice.
And we get the 9 of clubs.
I don't know, maybe
actually, I think an ace is worse than a club.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, the problem is we're going to check, and he's going to bet. And then we're going to be getting like 3-1 on a call. And the question only really becomes, is my straight good at least 25% time?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably good about that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And so that's what sucks. So maybe if I got to this spot with this hand, and I've been representing a flush draw all along, maybe I should shove the river, check, raise the flop, check, call the turn, shove the river. I mean, sometimes he's going to be like, oh, okay, sure, I have a full house, so I'm cheerful. Yeah, but if we're going to call him anyway, maybe we're better off.
Right, if you're going to call him, right. I think I can still find a fold, but.
Wow. I mean, that's just, you put in half your stack and then fold.
I know.
But it's a really bad card.
I guess in the moment you might be able to be like, wow, I really should have folded that turn.
Yeah.
Now I'm calling.
Yeah.
But I do kind of like what you're thinking as far as shoving here. I mean, if we're calling anyway.
Yeah.
But I guess we're doing it to try to get him to fold
an ace.
A better hand, right? Or not a better hand, sorry. To fold like an ace. But, I don't know. Do we want him to fold an ace?
No. He wants to bet. Yeah, he wants to bet it. He wanted to bet the ace.
Yeah, so shoving doesn't really make sense at all.
Yeah.
Can't get a better hand to fold.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was me thinking out loud and coming up with something that doesn't work, too.
Yeah, I looked at the road sign, and I was like, well, that's an interesting road to go down. And there was a dead end at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we have really no option here but to check. The only question is, are we check calling or check folding?
I mean, it's pretty break even, I think. I mean, What is your estimate of how often our straight is good?
It's probably right about 25%. Is it though? Yeah, I think it probably is.
Yeah. So in that case, because it's a break-even call, then you should be indifferent to calling or folding, except for the fact that you already put in half your stack. So it's like, how easy will it be for me to continue in this tournament with the stack I have now if I fold?
Oh, you still have 78 big blinds.
Yeah, so pretty.
No, not 78.
50,
No, it's
50 big.
50 big blinds. Still good. It's still fine.
Yeah, it's definitely, we still have a playable stack, so that's not going to be a problem. It's
Yeah, I think check folding is probably okay here, but we shouldn't even be here because we should have folded the turn. But
yeah,
I think I can. It's kind of like I was talking about earlier. If you told me you called here, I'd be like, okay, that seems okay considering the price we're getting and how often we're probably good. But I think folding's probably slightly better.
yeah. I mean, it's probably negative EV. I mean, or zero EV either way. So
Yeah, it's super close.
that assumes that 25% is about right as far as an estimate of how often a straight is good. Well, what's interesting here is, not to pat myself on the back, but I didn't want to call pre-flop.
Right. Yeah. This is how we get ourselves in these situations.
Yeah, exactly.
In the first place.
Well put. Well referenced, Clayton.
Going all the way back to
Yep.
10 years ago on 2+2, fold pre.
Fold pre.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
That's it. Those guys were right. Those trolls on 2+2 were right all along. Just fold pre and stay out
It
of
all
it.
came full circle.
All right.
That's funny.
Oh, man.
Some results.
So
Well, let's hear the result. Do you have the result?
yeah, so we check. He shoves, and I have no idea how long we tanked, but I'm assuming probably not very long because we're idiots. And we decided to call, and the pot went his way with the ace-8 of clubs.
Oh.
Yeah, I knew that ace of clubs mattered.
Yeah, so I mean, as you were saying, Clayton, people are three betting all their suited. Well, at least a percentage of their suited aces here. So we were actually good on the turn somehow when we wanted to fold, but it all went to hell on the river.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I really hate folding for a small bet on the turn. But it's just I didn't know how to play and going forward if I call there. So, oh wow, that's a really good hand. I'm glad you found that hand. That was a great hand for us to discuss.
It was cool.
This makes me want to get back into a podcast or something. Derek, you want to start a podcast?
Hey, we don't even have to start one. We could just take one back over.
I could do this every week. I'll take a break. I had 3 weeks with no one to talk to. Now you guys all want to do podcasts again.
Yeah. It would quickly devolve into once every 6 months, so don't worry.
Yeah. Your job is safe, we promise.
Yeah.
We're not going down that road again.
You know what's actually kind of interesting, too, about this hand is that he didn't... I'm surprised we just didn't get this all in on the flop.
I know. Why not?
Yeah.
Ace-8 of clubs on the ace-king-jack-2 club board. I mean, that's like the ultimate get-it-all-in hand. But we would have just been even more pissed that way. We would have been pissed at the poker gods. Instead, we're pissed at ourselves for not folding pre.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think you have to fold pre. Like you guys said, 100 blinds. But it's just... you get into these spots and then you're like, oh, what the hell do I do? And then you flop the nuts and life is great. And then the board pairs and you're like, well, that looks like a horrible card for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And interesting.
Turns out it was actually the best card. Well, I guess made up. It's the card that makes sure he's going broke.
On the turn, we thought about checking. And I said if I had made trips on the turn, I would bet it. I'd love to know what our opponent would have done because he actually did make trips on the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was a great hand, Derek. Really, really.
Yeah, it was a fun one. I'm glad I found that. I was digging through my database today, and I was like, ooh, this is kind of sexy. So, it was a fun one.
Very sexy. Sooner or later, we'll find one that you played well.
I'm hoping. Big Dog will question that, but...
Well... any other thoughts now that it's 9 years? You guys see like another 9 years for this business you have?
I'm just hoping I'm alive that long. No, I mean, I think it's kind of one of those things. Like it's the old thing you hear athletes say all the time, or like musicians. Like, I'm gonna do it as long as it's fun.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep doing it, and that's, I think, always been our. I don't think we've ever spoken those words out loud, but I think that's true. Like, as long as we're having a good time and continuing to learn and laugh, I think we'll just keep on going.
Yeah, the spirit of TPE is definitely a fun-loving, poker-loving spirit with a lot of camaraderie and friendship, and you're trying to help each other, which is so hard to find in the poker world nowadays. So I, for one, hope that TPE will last forever and that we can, keep it going for a really long time. Tell people about your dates for Vegas. Do you have them yet? Did you figure that out?
So I know that I've booked my flight there. I booked a one-way flight. So I'm arriving May 29th. And I'm not sure when I'm coming home. It could be a couple weeks. It could be, I don't think it's going to be closer to a month. There's just so much going on with my other business now that I don't think I'm going to be able to stay away for like a month plus, but I should be there at least a couple weeks.
If you win the main event, it's like $9 million, right?
No. But that would require me being able to win a tournament.
Oh, right. Forgot about that small detail there. What about you, Diego? Are you going to be in Vegas this summer like everybody else?
Yeah, most likely. I typically do, 4 days or so. Haven't selected the dates yet. It kind of depends on my work schedule, like usual. But I'm going to try, I'll probably go out there when Derek is out there. It's usually fun to hang with the guys. So not sure yet, but there's a lot. I mean, the schedule looks great this year, so there's a lot to choose from.
Really good schedule for the 50th annual World Series of Poker. I mean, I can't wait. I've been checking I've been looking for flights like every day. I'm going to find a really good. I'm kind of like a little bit nitty about overpaying for travel because I travel so much. So I just check 37 websites every day until it goes down $20. Then I finally buy.
Well, you may know this already, so forgive me if it's something you already know. But if you should be checking that incognito, because all right. Some people don't know that. So,
no, because they're jerks, and if they know you're going to fly, they're like, oh well, we don't have to lower it.
Oh yeah. Let me finish that thought for those who don't know it. If you're going to check flights often, looking for a good deal, check it incognito because the cookies on your browser they'll leverage that in the algorithm in terms of what to pay you based on how frequently you're checking, which indicates interest, which indicates that you have high demand. And so just go to an incognito browser. This way, it's always a fresh search.
There you go. Right.
See, we're huge tech and marketing nerds.
Yeah. Computer marketing guy knows all about this stuff. Yeah, I like read it on BuzzFeed article or something, but
I didn't think about that. Yeah, I didn't come up with that idea. Someone else smart did, and I'm just able to parrot it. So
he just talks good.
Yeah, exactly. I use good words. I have good words.
All the best words, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so you guys are the greatest. Follow these guys on Twitter. Give out your Twitters, guys.
Yeah.
I am at Derek Tenbush, DEREK TENBUSCH. I know I really should change it to Killingbird, but that's taken. So, but yeah, I'll link in the show notes as well.
And of course, Derek is also on Twitch every Tuesday night. You're an ACR Stormer, right?
Correct. Yep. Twitch.tv/Killingbird. We do a private home game over there. I'd love for all the TPE members and listeners to come play in that game with me. It's a lot of fun.
And I'm
what about you, Diego?
I'm RonFezBuddy. And I am also Diego_Lamanto, LOMANTO. I have two accounts because my nerdy techno stuff gets crickets on my poker account, and my poker stuff gets crickets on my software marketing account. So I found that there's just two different audiences, and they engage differently. So if you want to know more about enterprise software, who doesn't, follow me there. Otherwise, I'm RonFezBuddy.
Talk about sexy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's how I,
Keep talking, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And press the ladies.
Well, before I get too turned on, remind you guys you can follow me as well at Clayton Comic. We love the tweets. We love the love. We do not care at all about the awards that we were not nominated for or anything else. We do it for you guys. And so for Derek and Diego and everybody who's ever been involved with Tournament Poker Edge over the last 9 years, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas Plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Lock in intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mouth. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mouth. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mouth. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mouth. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mouth. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine,